Imagine for a second, right? Your entire business operation, sales data, your inventory tracking, tax records, everything, it just completely shuts down.
Oh, that's a total nightmare scenario.
Right. You are permanently locked out of your own financial history. And the crazy part is the culprit isn't, a malicious hacker or a server catching fire.
Yeah, it's something way more mundane.
Exactly. It's simply because a user typed a single letter in Arabic instead of English.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds almost absurd, right? But today, we're bringing you along to explore this really fascinating rescue mission inside the world of software architecture.
It's a great one.
Yeah, our mission today is to unpack the 2026 roadmap for the TurboCASH H5 migration. We're diving into a stack of technical development documents that show exactly how a legacy chart of accounts is being radically modernized across 19 different English and Afrikaans industries.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that this roadmap isn't just about, moving numbers around on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It's this brilliant case study in how technical debt eventually just collides with the real world. Software architecture fundamentally dictates business potential.
Absolutely.
Like, if the underlying database engine cannot understand the language your customer is speaking, it doesn't matter how good your product is.
The system will fail.
Exactly. It just breaks.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I think we first need to understand the actual mechanics of that failure. Like, how does a single foreign character actually crash a whole financial system?
Yeah, so to get that, you have to look at the older legacy versions of TurboCASH H5.
Specifically, release candidate 2 and earlier, right?
Right. The database fields in those versions had incredibly strict limits. An account name was capped at exactly 35 characters. Group names were limited to 30.
Wow, that is small.
And it gets worse. The batch types were restricted to just 16 characters.
16 characters, that's nothing.
To understand why those limits existed, you have to remember how data was stored decades ago.
Right, like in the 1990s.
Exactly. In the 90s and early 2000s, storage space was heavily constrained. Systems operated on single-byte character sets, like Latin 1.
Okay, so 1 letter, 1 byte.
Yes. In a single-byte system, 1 letter takes up exactly 1 byte of digital space. So a 16-character limit literally meant an allocation of exactly 16 bytes.
Which was fine if everyone spoke English, right?
Yeah, it was neat, predictable, highly efficient, as long as your entire user base spoke English or, a basic Western European language.
But the modern global economy doesn't operate exclusively on Latin 1. I mean, we use multi-byte Unicode now.
UTF-8 specifically.
Right, UTF-8, which allows computers to process complex alphabets, special symbols, localizations. So if a business user is operating in Arabic or Chinese,
or even just using heavily accented regional characters.
Yeah. A single letter might suddenly demand 2, 3, or even 4 bytes of space.
And that right there is the exact mechanism of the crash.
Oh, I see.
Think of the database engine in this case, Firebird, as an airline date agent strictly enforcing a carry-on baggage limit.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Under the old Latin 1 rules, the system knew that 16 characters meant 16 small carry-on bags. It had exactly enough overhead bin space for them.
But under UTF-8, a multi-byte character might be the size of a massive steamer trunk.
Exactly. So when a modern string of text tries to shove 48 bytes of data into a 16-byte space, the database engine encounters a critical schema collision.
So if I'm understanding this right, it's like trying to pour a 2-liter bottle of soda into a tiny teacup. The data overflows, and the whole system just shorts out.
The overhead bin doesn't just get stuffed tight. The hinges completely snap.
Wow.
Firebird realizes the data simply cannot fit, but it doesn't just politely trim the end of the word.
It panics.
Yeah, to protect the entire database from systemic corruption, it triggers a severe arithmetic exception for string truncation.
The dreaded SQL error -303.
Yes. In the developer documentation, this is dynamic SQL error -303. The system violently aborts the transaction and shuts down completely.
That is a massive insight for anyone dealing with legacy systems. I mean, technical debt isn't just about old, clunky code. It's about the outdated assumptions baked into that code.
The developers in the 1990s assumed business would always be localized and single-byte.
And today, software just has to assume business is global.
It has to.
So how does a developer actually fix this SQL 303 error? Because the documents outline a very specific checklist for the migration.
Well, the absolute first step in the 2026 developer guide. I mean, before a single piece of financial data is even touched or mapped, is a structural expansion.
Right, fixing the bin size.
Exactly. Developers must execute a schema update to stretch these constrained fields into a modern varchar 128 format.
Variable character field.
Yes, allocating enough flexible space to comfortably accommodate 128 multi-byte characters without triggering that truncation panic.
So expanding those database walls stops the technical bleeding. But a massive empty database is pretty useless.
Completely useless.
Like, if a developer just dumps the chaotic, unstructured 90s accounting data back into this new space, they haven't actually solved the business problem.
No, they've just moved the mess to a bigger room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how did they restructure the actual accounting architecture to make sense of this new capacity?
This is where the 2026 blueprint introduces a highly modular layout. They transitioned the entire chart of accounts to a 4-digit main account and a 3-digit sub-account structure.
Oh, okay. So instead of a random string of numbers, a ledger entry looks like G4100 for the main account.
Right, followed by a dash and then 100 for the sub-account.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's kind of like a library's Dewey Decimal System. Instead of books just piled up, you now have a permanent locked aisle, the 4 digits, and a specific shelf, the 3 digits.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Looking at the master refactoring table from the sources, the underlying logic is incredibly rigid.
Very rigid, yeah.
All the 1000s are strictly allocated for assets, the 2000s are liabilities, 3000s are equity, 4000s represent revenue.
5000s are direct costs.
Right, and the 6000s are operating expenses. So let's look at how a developer actually maps old codes into this new parent structure. Say an old system had a delivery vehicle randomly logged under an account code like, I don't know, 450. How is that remapped?
Well, the developer uses the master refactoring table to guide that asset to its permanent home. A vehicle is a non-current asset.
So it has to go into the 1000s block.
Exactly. Specifically, the refactoring guide might dictate that non-current assets live in the 1000 to 1999 range. So it slots the vehicle into, say, G1200.
And the old 450 code is retired.
Retired entirely. The historical data is safely bridged into the G1200 main account. This ensures that when a balance sheet is generated, all assets are perfectly grouped together without manual sorting.
That makes the data infinitely easier to query.
Oh, absolutely.
But the developer workflow to roll this out across the entire software ecosystem seems monumental.
It was a massive undertaking.
Yeah, they had to map out specific industry templates for the English block first. Church, farming, manufacturing, medical, personal, restaurant, retail, school, service, and workshop.
19 in total across both languages.
Right. But why go through the exhausting process of building entirely separate ledgers? Like, why couldn't a church and a manufacturing plant just use the same generic blank template?
Because a generic template creates massive friction for the end user.
How so?
Think about it. A church relies heavily on fund accounting, right? Tracking restricted donations, managing community outreach expenses.
Right, very specific things.
But a manufacturing plant requires a highly complex ledger to track raw material purchases, work-in-progress inventory, factory floor depreciation.
Oh, yeah. Totally different worlds.
If you give them both the same blank slate, they have to spend weeks custom building their charts, and they'll inevitably make structural errors. By providing industry-specific templates, the software provides immediate, tailored value.
And the roadmap goes even further. Once that English matrix was stable, the developers executed a parallel localization for the AFRIKAANS market.
Yeah, the AFRIKAANS industries.
Right, so they built out BOERDERY for farming, DIENS for service, KERK for church, MEDIES for medical, VERVAARDIGING for manufacturing, and WERKSWINKEL for the workshop template.
A total one-to-one mapping.
But from a technical perspective, why was a parallel code repository actually necessary? I mean, why not just build a simple front-end translation tool that just flips the English words to African Sigrid?
Oh, a simple language toggle is extremely dangerous in financial software.
Really? Why?
If you just paste translated labels over an English core, the underlying database queries can break when generating complex regional tax reports.
Oh, so it messes with the actual logic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The localization had to be built as parallel repositories using the exact same 4x3 numerical matrix. This guarantees that whether a ledger is running the English medical template or the AFRIKAANS MEDIES template, the core financial calculations and compliance rules execute identically.
That makes a lot of sense. And that brings up a critical warning explicitly highlighted in the source documents.
The base files warning.
Yes. Yeah. There's a massive red flag for any developer attempting to clone these regional templates. They are instructed that they must source their base files exclusively from the local 5.4 release candidate 2 directory.
Or from Verified Aus Financial's web download.
Right. The developers are explicitly warned against grabbing older, easily accessible files. Specifically, the 5.3 Release Candidate 9 bases.
Yeah, do not touch those.
Let me guess. The 5.3 RC9 files are a hidden landmine. They still have the old 16-character limit buried deep in their schema.
Exactly that. If a developer uses a 5.3 RC9 base file just to save time, they're unknowingly infecting the new architecture with the old Latin 1 constraints.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the moment an end user applies a multi-bot language pack or types a long batch name, the schema shatters, and that SQL 303 error comes roaring back.
So purging any lingering 5.3 RC9 bases is basically a non-negotiable step in the migration checklist.
100%.
I want to stop and look at a specific piece of jargon in these documents that sounds pretty intimidating. The roadmap relies on something called the SGUP1 nesting framework.
Right, SGRUP1.
To a small business owner running like a local retail shop, that sounds incredibly technical. But isn't this overkill for a guy just running a tiny local workshop? What actually is SGUP1 nesting in plain English?
It's actually the opposite of overkill. SGRP1 is basically an automated filing system that hides the complexity of accounting from the business owner.
Okay, how does that work?
Imagine our local retail owner opening their software on a Tuesday morning. They don't want to see a sprawling 4-digit corporate reporting matrix.
No, of course not.
They just want to log a quick expense for a broken window. So on their screen, they only see simple, plain English 3-digit subaccounts. They just click a button labeled repairs.
So they get the simplicity of a basic cash register.
Right. But behind the scenes, the SGRP1 framework takes that simple repairs entry and automatically nests it or rolls it up into the formal G6000 operating expenses master category.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the business owner experiences zero friction during their daily data entry. But at the end of the quarter, the software effortlessly generates a highly formal, perfectly structured financial report for their account.
The complexity is hidden entirely under the floorboards. That is a brilliant design.
It really is.
But fixing the numerical structure is only half the battle, right? The 2026 migration also tackles a massive problem with the actual language being used.
Yes, the terminology modernization.
The source material outlines a sweeping modernization of this terminology. Looking at the legacy terms, it honestly feels like stepping into a time machine. Words like debtors, creditors, and stock were fundamentally baked into the old software.
And those terms are actively alienating to modern academic and professional users.
So the roadmap completely scrubs them out.
Yes. Debtors is replaced with accounts receivable for tracking customers. Creditors becomes accounts payable for tracking suppliers.
And the vague term stock is updated to the universally recognized inventory. I mean, I understand that accounts receivable sounds more professional, but practically speaking, why does it matter if I call it stock or inventory? If it's my own business, shouldn't I be able to label my accounts whatever makes sense to my own brain?
It's a fair question.
Like if I want to call my customer debt money people owe me, why is the software forcing me to use formal terms?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, eventually your business has to interact with the outside world.
Right.
The global economy operates on IFRS, the International Financial Reporting Standards. Universities, corporate banks, international tax authorities, they all speak IFRS.
Okay.
If you use custom, colloquial terminology, your financial statements are completely unreadable to an auditor or a loan officer.
I guess they would have to sit down and manually decipher what money people owe me actually refers to in a formal reporting structure.
Precisely. And that requires an accountant to perform highly expensive manual retroactive adjustments just to map your messy books back to reality.
Which costs a lot of money.
Exactly. By locking in standardized IFRS terminology from day one, the 2026 blueprint ensures your financial statements are instantly ready for an auditor's desk without requiring a single hour of translation.
That standardization also removes some serious structural liabilities.
Yeah.
Like, the documents show that developers deliberately stripped the word corporate out of the templates designed for sole proprietors.
Yes, that was a huge fix.
For instance, a line item that used to be called corporate gifts was renamed to promotional gifts and customer tokens. Why was that necessary?
That is a critical correction. A sole proprietor is legally not a corporate entity.
Right.
When a freelancer is logging expenses and they see a bucket labeled corporate gifts, they naturally assume that category doesn't apply to them.
Oh, because they're not a corporation.
Exactly.
Right.
Consequently, they miscategorize those expenses into generic, vague marketing buckets, which completely skews the accuracy of their financial reporting.
And There is an even more dangerous terminology trap detailed in the refactoring table. The old legacy system actually allowed small business owners to log routine client gifts under an operating expense labeled client goodwill.
Oh, which is a terrifying prospect for any certified accountant.
Why is that terrifying?
Because in the strict language of formal accounting, goodwill is not a feeling or a nice gesture.
Right.
It is a highly specific, intangible, non-current asset. It only appears on a balance sheet during a formal corporate merger or acquisition. It represents the premium a buyer pays over the fair market value of the company they are acquiring.
Wait, really? So if a sole proprietor buys a nice bottle of wine as a thank you for a loyal client and casually logs it under goodwill,
An automated AI tax engine or a human auditor reviewing that ledger scans the word goodwill and instantly assumes this tiny micro-business has just acquired another company.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. It is a glaring compliance anomaly that will almost certainly trigger an audit.
Just because of one word.
Exactly. So by simply changing that label to promotional gifts, the 2026 roadmap eliminates a massive, unnecessary audit hazard.
A single incorrect word could literally bring the tax authorities to your door. It really highlights how software acts as an invisible advisor.
It really does.
And speaking of cleaning up messes, the developers also had to tackle internal redundancies. There was a duplicate block, the G6350 block, that was just floating around in the old code, causing chaos.
Yeah, that block overlapped almost perfectly with the established 6000 selling block.
And having two identical buckets is bad.
Very bad. When you have two identical buckets in an accounting system, you get messy split postings. Half of a company's sales commissions were landing in the 6350 block, and the other half were landing in the 6000 block.
Just a total mess.
Right. The new blueprint ruthlessly wipes out that duplicate G6350 sequence, forcing all those expenses into a single source of truth within the 6000 block.
Perfect. So we have covered the database engine expanding to handle multi-byte characters, the rigid 4x3 numerical grid, and the shift to modern IFRS terminology.
A lot of ground.
Yeah. The final piece of this blueprint is how it actually impacts the business owner over time. The documents outline this concept of a growth ladder specifically designed for MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Right.
How does this new layout support future business growth without requiring the founder to, constantly buy new software?
The genius of the MSME growth ladder is that it natively anticipates complex international standards. Let's look at the revenue block.
Okay.
A brand new startup generally only needs to log simple daily cash sales. But as that enterprise grows into a medium-sized business, they might start signing complex multi-year service contracts.
Right.
Under the strict rules of IFRS 15 for revenue recognition, you cannot simply claim a 3-year contract as instant cash on day one.
Because you haven't actually delivered the 3 years of service yet.
Correct. That income must be carefully deferred and recognized incrementally over the life of the contract.
And the new system handles that.
Yes. Because the new 4-digit main accounts are strictly and permanently segmented, an accountant can seamlessly split those existing revenue lines into deferred revenue sub-accounts. The foundational architecture doesn't have to be torn down, it just expands within its predefined limits.
That's amazing. I see the same logic applied to the people who owe the business money. A small business just tracks basic accounts receivable. But the documents note that a medium enterprise eventually has to comply with IFRS 9.
Yes.
Can you translate IFRS 9 for the listener?
Sure. IFRS 9 dictates how a company handles expected credit loss. Essentially, as you grow, you have to start mathematically predicting which of your customers are going to default on their payments based on historical risk models.
Wow.
The new parent-child account structure natively supports the addition of those complex risk-tracking ledgers whenever the business is ready to activate them.
I actually found the product design around taxation to be the most clever psychological feature in the entire roadmap.
The VAT accounts.
Yes. According to the April 2026 South African budget update detailed in the sources, the G2400,000 VAT ledger sequence, the value-added tax accounts, are completely disabled by default right out of the box.
It is a phenomenal example of architecture acting as a guardrail.
Yep.
In that specific jurisdiction, a microenterprise legally cannot charge a 15% value-added tax unless they are formally registered with the Revenue Authority.
And the mandatory threshold for registration is 2.3 million Rand in annual turnover. Right?
Exactly, which aligns with the turnover tax threshold. There is a voluntary option available if they cross 120,000 Rand, but initially it's locked.
So by disabling the VAT accounts out of the box, The software is essentially putting child-proof locks on the tax cabinet.
That's a great way to put it.
It stops a stressed-out brand-new founder from accidentally issuing a VAT invoice on day one. Because if they did that without being registered, they would be committing a serious statutory offense.
Yes, this raises an important question about software responsibility. Architecture shouldn't just record numbers. It should actively guide user compliance.
Protect them from themselves.
Exactly. The software protects them during their most vulnerable startup phase. And then, when their turnover crosses that 2.3 million rand threshold, the business owner can seamlessly unlock those pre-mapped, highly compliant tax accounts with a single click.
So what does this all mean for us? When we step back from the technical weeds of the 2026 TurboCASH H5 migration, we are looking at a profound lesson in how to build things that last.
Truly.
I mean, they stretched the core database fields to vanquish those terrifying SQL 303 multi-byte crashes. They implemented a rock-solid 4-digit by 3-digit structure that brings organized logic to 19 different industries.
English and Afrikaans.
Right. They scrubbed out audit traps like the word goodwill, and they built invisible guardrails for tax compliance. Whether you are a developer writing database schemas or a small business owner trying to make sense of your SGRU P1 ledgers, there is a profound lesson here about building foundations that expect growth rather than fear it.
I completely agree. And I think there is a broader takeaway here that applies far beyond software development.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Think about the systems you use in your own life or work right now. Are you currently operating on a legacy structure that limits your vocabulary and scales poorly?
Oh, wow.
What would your own personal 2026 refactoring look like if you rebuilt yourself for global scalability?
That is a brilliant and provocative question to leave you with, because eventually we all want to build something that reaches a global scale, and we need the underlying foundation to hold the weight. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the source material on this deep dive. Keep questioning your foundations and stay insanely curious. We'll see you next time.